Welcome to the Shower Epiphanies podcast, where we explore your hidden thoughts and desires, revealing your greatest drop the mic moments. Now, here's your host, Art Costello.
Welcome to the Shower Epiphanies podcast. Today, and I hope I don't blow this name because I didn't ask before the show, Britt Bolnick. And I am just really thrilled to have her because I know that her and I are going to make a lot of connection, and we're going to give you guys a lot of great info for you to use in your lives. And I think there's going to be a lot of epiphanies come out of this. Britt mentors women, business owners, entrepreneurs, creatives, and visionaries who want to do what they love, get seen, and make money. We all like to make money. She specializes in the inner work and magical tools that make the external strategies and actions effective. She uses her own tried and true tools developed on her journey from food stamps to financial success and her 10 years experience in the industry to give her clients their version of success. I am just thrilled to hear your story. I want to hear everything about you, Britt.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, we're going to have a ball.
Yeah.
Go ahead and start out where you grew up and how Britt became Britt.
Yeah. Wow. What a great question. I grew up in New York City. I grew up in the West Village, in Greenwich Village, on the island of Manhattan in the 70s and 80s, which was very different from the New York City that anyone visiting today experienced. And my mother is a writer. My father worked during the week in South Jersey, so he was gone most of the week. I had an adopted Korean brother. And I really grew up, on the streets of 1980s New York City, which was a really interesting place. Got into the punk rock movement. I was an angry kid. I was an angry and kind of constantly flouting and thumbing my nose at authority sort of kid. So I grew up in the punk rock movement, spent a lot of time in the East Village and abandoned buildings and, with some really unsavory characters, got into drugs and drinking by the time I was 13, had 2 runaways under my belt by the time I was 15, really wasn't heading anywhere that was very good.
The first thought that comes to my mind, and I love how you've expressed this, but were you living to your expectations or the expectations of others?
I think that I was so hurt and angry that I was kind of just running. But that's a really interesting question, actually, because in the years of work that I've done on myself and understanding who I am and what happened, I think that family dynamics play a lot into it. And one of the things that, every family has its agreements, its unspoken agreements. And one of ours was that I was sort of the scapegoat that I would be the squeaky wheel so that I got the grease and no one really had to look at the other forms of dysfunction that were happening. And in that instance, I was living up to other people's expectations. So I think it came partly from that and partly just from that I was so hurt and angry and I didn't really have an outlet for it. So what most girls do, men turn it outwards and women turn it inwards. And I turned it back on myself.
Yeah, one of the things that I think about, because I wrote the book Expectation Therapy, and I am done a lot of research on expectations. A lot of your anger was probably seated in unmet expectations that you had. Yeah. And other people were trying to apply theirs, and it creates this opposition to each other. It's like 2 positives rejecting each other. You both think you're going in the right direction, but really you're repelling each other. Yeah. And you and me, because we're very similar. I grew up in New Jersey, right across the bridge. And, my story is interesting, but this is about your story. So go ahead. I'll try not to interrupt more.
Yeah, no. That's really relevant. And I think that that's really important to recognize. I was very much reacting at that point and didn't have the self-awareness. Who among us really did in the years 13 to 18? But, I was really headed for a dead end. And about 90% of the kids that I knew from that time hit that dead end. Very few made it out. And I made it out. And I graduated high school somehow, very small, alternative, super hippie high school. And I went on to college and I found magic, which was really important to me. I found the art and science of changing energy at that point. And that really helped pull me out of the self-destruction.
Tell us about that. That's very interesting.
So I found a connection with something bigger than myself, which for me, my father was raised Jewish and my mother was Jewish, but was raised Catholic because of who her mother married. And I grew up in a very non-religious household, but my mother is very spiritual, even though she would never describe herself as that. And I think that what I found was my connection to something bigger than myself in the form of a connection with nature, which I, again, always had, but I didn't really have a chance to consciously nurture growing up in New York City. And I found several teachers, teachers of herbalism and plant wisdom. And that all sort of helped me to ground and root myself a little bit and let go of some of the negativity it gave me control over myself and my thought process, which really helped.
Yeah, that is really, really significant. Our stories are so similar. My grandmother was Jewish and my grandfather was Catholic, and she turned Catholic to marry my grandfather. They had come from Prussia. Because I'm a little bit older than you. I grew up in the late 50s, early 60s in New Jersey. Well, actually, none of the 60s in New Jersey because we had moved to a very rural area. But anyway, very similar backgrounds, very similar.
So funny. Yeah.
No, it's how small the world is.
It is. Yeah.
I mean, we all have a sense of connection when we let ourselves explore it,
Yeah.
The need to have closure in any given situation is sheer human nature. And when it comes to romantic relationships, this desire skyrockets. Has your previously failed relationship left you in immense pain? It's not uncommon for people to shy away from a new relationship after their first one fails miserably. The fear of the unknown makes them hide in a shell to prevent any future heartbreak. Relatable? Despite wanting to love and be loved, you can't take the plunge if your mind and heart are still locked somewhere in the past. Maybe you aren't aware of the power of releasing the past, or perhaps you don't know how to do it. Art Costello in his online course teaches the art of moving on from bad places to happier, more stable ones. This course can change your life for good, helping you beat all kinds of negativity on the road to eternal bliss. Sign up now before the gloominess gets the better of you at expectationacademy.com.
One of the things I love is I love having these conversations with my guests because it really shows people when you take the effort and make the effort to find out about other people, you find out how much we are all really interconnected in so many ways. I mean, I can find connection in almost everybody.
Anyone.
Anyone. And it's just a blessing. Here we go again. I went off on a tangent.
No, that's so awesome. And I think that that's so important. And I think that, you're bringing up something that was really important, which I hadn't quite articulated, which is that I found connections to things that weren't self-destructive. And that really gave me a way to connect with the world around myself and connect with myself that pulled me out of that helped me to direct my energies positively. That was an important part of it.
Yeah. Who do you identify as the most important person in your life?
It's going to make me cry. My uncle Tony, who was raised and lived his whole life in South Jersey. And he was just this old school Italian guy, woodsman, very stoic, very serious. But I loved him fiercely. He's my favorite person in the world other than my daughter.
And I'm gonna probe it a little further. Why? I mean, what did he do that has made him the most important person in your development?
Gosh, it's so weird. It's so hard to talk about without crying. I spent a lot of time down on their farm in South Jersey when I was little. And as I grew older, he and I formed a really, really deep connection. And he was very curmudgeon-y, didn't speak a lot, but he loved me fiercely. And he had a way of, when I'd show up at their house, I went down there a lot in my early 20s and I was still in a really self-destructive lifestyle. And I would often show up there, at 6 a.m. after leaving the city at 4 a.m. after drinking all night and driving by myself down there. And I'd show up disheveled and smelling of smoke and with alcohol in my breath. And he'd have an axe over his shoulder and he'd say something like, "Got to go see about some trees. Want to come?" And I'd just get out of my car and go follow him. And we'd spend the morning just sitting in the woods talking. And he taught me so much about nature and about love. And he was he was one of the first people. He had this saying. He would always say to me, he'd say, he'd look around and he'd say, these are not our people. One day a ship's going to land and that's going to be our people. And they're going to take us back to where we belong. And he just had this sort of humorous, like, these are not our people. But I had always felt that way my whole life. Like I was isolated and no one understood me. And he not only understood me, but he claimed me and also felt that our people were out there somewhere.
Wow. It's going to make me cry because we just are so connected with stuff. I was kind of shunned after we moved from New Jersey to a rural farm in upstate New York, 60 miles below Rochester. When we moved there, everybody thought that we were mafia and we were running. So none of the kids, none of the teachers. I mean, I had 20 kids in my graduating class, so it wasn't a lot of people around, but the ones that were there shunned us.
Yeah.
And I felt that isolation, and I felt so much like you just described.
Yeah.
People don't know what that feels like unless you've gone through it.
Yeah. They don't know and they don't understand what happens when someone says, I see you and I accept you and we are one. And that just was his acceptance of me and his quiet love. And the fact that he really didn't like a lot of people made it so sacred to me.
Yeah.
He was one of my wise mentors and teachers.
The one for me that did that was a teacher named Paul King. He was my social studies teacher in 7th grade. And he walked up behind me and whispered in my ear at my desk one day in school. And he said, don't let it get you. He said, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And just those words made all the difference. But I see at the same time, I was having these conversations because I used to go up to this hill and lay on my back and ask God what was going to become of me. And I heard God say, just be patient. You're going to be okay. It's going to all work out. And it became such a part of my life, how I viewed the world, that, it's led me to where I am today, which has been this incredible life journey. And I want to hear the rest of yours.
I'll just say, it's always so inspirational to me how you don't have to do something monumental to have an impact on someone else's life. You can just say 2 sentences that they remember for the rest of their lives. And that's so inspirational to me to remember how many opportunities we have to touch other people. So thank you for sharing that.
You make me cry now because that is very much who I am. I can be in a subway in New York, or I can be in Croatia, sitting at a patio table at a restaurant and have a conversation with somebody. And we're just so connected. And, it's just the blessing. My kids thought it was a curse because everywhere we go, they were always having to drag me and say, Dad, we got to go. We got to go do this, I said, no, I'm having this conversation, and they never understood. But, it is a blessing of how we can impact people's lives. So
I agree. Yeah. So he and my daughter, who is 14 now, are definitely my 2 sort of soulmates. So I went to college, dropped out of one.
Where'd you go to college?
So I started at Marymount in Manhattan in New York City, which I hated, very traditional, very sit in a room and listen to someone speak. I dropped out, and then I found Vermont College in Montpelier, which is based all on self-study and intensives on campus. And I loved it. I flew through my bachelor's, and then I actually joined their master's degree program just because I didn't want to stop going. So I wound up with my master's in education. I taught for many years in the New York City jail system, Rikers Island, the houses of detention, and then in a upstate women's maximum security facility, which I loved teaching in prison. And then what happened? Then I met my husband, who was really a blip in this story, my ex-husband, who turned out to just sort of be a seed donor and then kind of went his way, but gave me my kid, who's just my favorite thing in the universe. And I started in-arms coaching because I'm fast forwarding over a lot of it. There were a lot of really bad years. He had left. I had no child support. The kid was 15 months old. I couldn't put her down for the first 2 years of her life. I think I held her, or someone else held her, for 2 years. And at that point, I was completely broke and waitressing and bartending 6 or 7 nights a week in New York City. And just really at wit's end, like absolutely at wit's end. I lost my home. It got foreclosed on. I had put all this savings into a house in Brooklyn, which you understand the value of, because I thought, here's something good I can do. I can invest in our future and I'll buy a piece of New York City real estate. And then it wound up getting foreclosed on because I couldn't keep the mortgage up when her dad left, and just kind of really hit rock bottom. And that was the birthing of In Arms Coaching.
Can you tell us some of your story, how you pulled yourself up out of rock bottom? What it took for you to do that?
Yeah, it took a couple of things that I thought were the worst things in the world, which were really a blessing. One is that my daughter's father left completely and was either uncommitted enough or not intelligent enough to sign over sole custody instead of full custody to me. So he lost his parental rights, which meant, or he gave them away, which meant that I was free to do whatever I needed to do. I didn't need to stay around him or share custody with him. He also then flaked on child support. But looking back, I would have chosen my freedom over, $200 or $300 a month anyway.
That's interesting because I run into so many women who spend so much energy chasing down dollars that they may never see.
Yeah.
And what about the energy? Do you know what I mean? The energy to not go to chasing him. And what was the trigger in your head that said, I'm enough that I can take care of my daughter and myself?
I'd love to say that it was that. I think at that point, it was less that and more just that I was really terrified of having to share custody with him. He was unstable and to some degree dangerous. So I was counting my blessings. I was holding my breath that he wouldn't resurface and say, nope, I changed my mind. I want to be a part of this kid's life. So I kind of considered it as, you don't have to pay me if you just get the hell out of here and leave me and my kid alone. It was a fair price to pay.
That's a powerful trigger. When you fear someone, but see, fear works two ways. It either propels you or it expels you,
Exactly. And it motivated me to say, you know what, it's me and this kid and I got this. I totally had this. I also had, I had to really eat crow. Losing the house was devastating for me. And I had to let go of the idea that I would have and I also had sunk like $80,000 into it, which I kissed goodbye. And we moved back in with my mom, who to this day lives in Greenwich Village. We moved back in with her so that she could take care of the kid at night. So it was really, really hard. And there were mornings where I woke up, I worked until 12 or 1 a.m. I went home, I went to sleep. It was about 2 a.m. The kid woke up at 4 most mornings. And I was only one who could get up with her. And I remember just waking up in the dark, hearing her cry at 4 a.m. and just bursting into tears and thinking, I physically cannot do this another day. I can't do it. And I did it. I did it every day until she started sleeping later. And I got through. And I think that having him walk away gave me this realization that I was sort of getting a do-over. I had this kid. I had me. And I had no strings. I could create whatever life I wanted for us. And I decided that it had to be a different life. And that's when I started In Arms Coaching. In about 2 hours a week, broke as anything. I had ways to help other parents. In Arms Coaching originally was parenting coaching, which I was really passionate about at that moment. I had ways to help other parents. I had some expertise. I had climbed out of, a cesspool. And I felt like I could start to lend a hand backwards and maybe create a business that would give us freedom, the two of us freedom.
Has anyone ever inspired you to discover a happier, healthier, and more fulfilled you? It is a magical experience, isn't it? Inspiration is indeed very powerful, yet it's often undermined. It can lift you from the ground to the sky in no time. Have you ever thought about returning the favor by inspiring the people around you? If you don't think you have it in you, we have good news for you. Art Costello's online course has everything you need to learn to supercharge yourself and shape your character into a powerful personality. Get ready to discover your strengths and unleash the creativity within. Don't believe it? Check it out yourself by signing up for this life-changing course at expectationacademy.com. That's expectationacademy.com.
One of the thoughts I had when you were telling this was it makes such a difference, our perspective on what happens to us, because there's so many people out there that just don't have the perspective that you had. It's available to them. They just don't make the choice to take it and run with it. They would rather wallow in it. And well, I've got to commend you for doing that. It's a beautiful thing when you see somebody rise up out of it and make something of themselves when there was nothing, when you could have fallen into the despair. Because I think a lot of times in our lives, I think everybody goes through things that either makes them or breaks them.
Absolutely.
And it's all a matter of choice and how we move through it.
Yeah. I just want to add one thing. Some of this is who I am as a person, but some of it is also, I was very heavily influenced. When I was 12 or 13, my mother gave me the book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And that made up, and his premise there for your listeners, if they haven't heard this, is that while we can't control what happens to us, we always retain the ability to control our reaction. And it was written from his experiences in a concentration camp. I actually just gave that book to my daughter. But that book and Dr. Frankl's message has been absolutely fundamental to my core philosophy and the way that I live my life.
You know, a lot of the survivors of the concentration camps have such powerful perspective on life because they've seen so much death, you know, and destruction and all that, and they've risen up out of it. Wow. I guess that's something to be, you know, I always talk to people about making lemonade out of lemons. You know, so many times we're not dealt things that we think is fair, but those things are actually meant to teach us lessons that we will use in our lives or throughout our lives if we so choose. So a lot of it's about choice. So,
completely.
You know, that's what I want people to take away from this in your life and my life and all the people that are out there that have experienced things. You know, it's about perspective, and it's about just making a choice that you're not going to let it take you down, and you're going to use it as a learning tool and let it propel you to where you're meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because greatness, you know what? Greatness is not being a superstar in the NBA or a football player. Greatness to me is in how much we can transfer our knowledge to other people so they don't have to live the same mistakes that we did. You know?
So agree. So well said.
That's how we change the world.
Yeah, I agree.
So tell us about some of your programs that help women and all that.
So the way that I work with women, a lot of the business coaches who are at my level in terms of years in have created kind of giant group e-course programs because they really want to leverage their time. But what I love is really working with people. So my programs stay very small, and they're more mentorships than big coaching programs. And I just teach women who are entrepreneurs and business owners who have an impact that they want to see in the world, who want to be a part of a change and have a brilliance or a skill set or a talent that contributes to that. And very often what happens is that women who are very passion driven don't understand the business end of it and how to get their impact out there, how to get seen, how to get heard, how to make money doing what they love so they don't have to work a side hustle. And that's what I do. I teach women to get seen, to have an impact, to grow their visibility, to grow their businesses so that they can do what they love and actually earn the money that they need to earn.
I'm going to make a statement and I want you to react to it.
Okay.
You focus on women.
Mm-hmm.
Do you not feel that men need the same thing?
Men in business are very different from women in business. And I have no doubt that men come to business and entrepreneurship with their own sets of blocks and hurdles to jump over. They're generally different than women. And while I have worked with men here and there, most, privately, because my programs are just for women, my marketing doesn't speak to men. My messages don't speak to men. So I'm not opposed to working with men. It's just that what I'm saying and what I'm talking about and what I've struggled with doesn't really resonate with men. They have different issues.
Yeah. I just notice a lot with business coaches that it seems to be divided. Men work with men and women work with women. And there's some women that work with men, and I've actually worked with both on coaching, business coaching and marketing coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had very little success with it, marketing with coaches. I don't know if it's because I am so steeped in my own expectations that I do not, the way that I live my life is that I live them to my set of expectations for myself. And I do not let external expectations dictate my decisions, my maneuvers, how I move through this life. And it's what I teach. And, because I can teach men and women to be independent, successful people if they'll just if they'll just listen to their own expectations and stop listening to the expectations of others. But I think part of it is too that I am so niched. I mean, because I'm in this little niche about expectations. And in this country, we have such a negative expectation view in our world. We're told not to expect. And see, what people don't understand is that's put out there so somebody else can control how you think.
Yeah, exactly. The way that I work with women is very much client-led. They tell me what they want, and then I guide them to successful ways that I have made that happen for myself and that I have guided other women to have that happen. So it's not really me saying, you need this formula. It's me saying, what do you want? Now, here's a way that I believe will get you that.
I love that because, part of the way that I work is that my program is all set up about other people doing work because everybody comes to you wanting to be fixed, but you can't fix them.
Nope.
They have to fix themselves.
Yep.
They have to fix themselves. So, I don't have a magic wand that can make you the best internet marketer in the world.
Yeah.
So, I just got to go with giving them the skills for them to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
I think we function in a lot of the same ways.
Yeah, very similar.
As we do seem to in our lives have so much in common. But I know my audience cannot see this, but there's a dog behind you on my screen. And
there are many.
I'm an animal lover.
Oh.
I just got a brand new Labradoodle. And her name's Sydney. She's as cute as can be. Matter of fact, if you look at my arms, I'm teaching her not to jump up. But anyway, I know that you are involved in animal rescue.
Yeah, my side project is a dog rescue, a pit bull rescue that I started 3 years ago with my husband, which has been a lifelong dream of mine. And that's kind of one of the things that I talk about when I guide women in business, because I've been able to make my business so successful and profitable and have gotten it to mostly about 3 days a week. So I was able to make space to start a dog rescue. These are 2 of our 4 rescued pit bulls. And our dog rescue is Pity Posse Rescue. And we don't rescue only pit bulls, but in terms of advocacy and responsible dog ownership and education and legislation, we focus on the bully breeds because they're the most, stigmatized and prejudiced against. But it's just it's grown like a weed. It is through the roof. We have a whole team of people. We're expanding massively. And that's been really, really great and really kind of a testament to that what I'm doing is working because I've been able to make this space to start and run an entire nonprofit and still take a lot of time off, honestly.
Is that focused up in your area where you live?
It is focused in Maine, where our social media presence is off the hook. And we really want this to be something that grows bigger and bigger and bigger. But our long-term goal is to buy a giant piece of land here in Maine to build a facility so that we can start training programs and doggy daycare and boarding and eventually open our own vet clinic. We're thinking really big with it.
Let's talk about that thinking big.
Yeah.
So when you do things, you go full out to do them.
I do. It's hard for my husband sometimes.
Do you know that that's based in your expectations?
Ooh, say more.
Well, when people who always have bigger dreams, bigger ideas, also have the expectation of being able to not only achieve it, but to actually expect the vision of it. And they open themselves up. See, we see our expectations in 2 ways, either through faith or fear. There's no in between. There's no gray area about expectations.
Yeah.
It's the one seed that God has planted in every man, woman, and child that propels them into this success and all that. The difference becomes in how we manage our expectations. Because when we manage them correctly, it gives us the ability to dream big, but have the realization that you have to adjust along the way. You keep that dream out there. So I think when your uncle, I think that he watered that seed in you to where you believe in the possibility of everything. Am I wrong?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You're right.
See, I believe in the possibility of everything. If you can get people to believe in the possibility of everything, that everything is a learning experience in their life, it shifts you away from that victimization, from that pity me, from that idea, because you'll bounce up. You know, I'm a Vietnam veteran. I was a machine gunner in the Marine Corps. I think of all the things. I was abandoned as a child, as a 9-year-old, and not in the traditional way. But I could have let all these things put me in the pity potty. And I've never done that because I had that conversation with God that everything was going to be okay. And then Mr. King watered that expectation that just be faithful. You'll be okay. I believed in it wholeheartedly. And I have done more things than you could ever imagine. I mean, I have always done everything. I married the woman that I wanted to when everybody said, "Are you effing crazy? That woman's never going to talk to you." And, you know, and I was married to her for 38 years and she died in my arms when she got ovarian cancer in 2006 when she passed away. But I could have, of all the moments in my life when I lost her, that is the most darkest period in my life. I had been successful in everything I had ever done all my life. I mean, everything. And I lost it for about 3 years. And my kids came and said, "Dad, you can't do this. You promised you wouldn't." And then I rejuvenated myself. And out of that came expectation therapy and everything I'm doing now, you know, and I'm just blessed. But it's all about having the expectation that it's okay. Everything is always going to work out when we let it work out. Yes, there's going to be pain in your life. Everybody goes through pain. I'm on a preaching thing.
You're making me cry. This is the only podcast I've ever done that's made me cry like 3 times already.
I'm sorry.
You need to warn people. I have no tissues anywhere near me.
Hey, see that shirt sleeve you got on? Just wipe them. You know, it is though. You know, we are so limited when we limit ourselves. But I've preached and
it's so true. I'm so glad people are getting a chance to hear that because that's really inspirational and people need to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to live in poverty. You've proved it. I've proved it. You don't. You have to think big. And you have to adjust along the way. There's no simpler way to put it. You know, I mean, really, you just have to be willing to adjust and not let it kick you in the butt, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
So, you know, now that I've got it.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh, well, let's see. Where can we go with this now?
We were talking about dog rescue, an infinite possibility.
Yeah. And I love what you're doing with animals. I love animals. I think that they are such a benefit to mankind because they're so intuitive. And I'll really make you cry. Go to my website. No. Go to my website sometime and read my blog. It's buried on my blogs. I wrote it a long time ago. It's called My 10-Year Love Affair.
Okay, I will.
I won't give it away too much, but I had a giant schnauzer named Chloe. She was 155 pounds. The biggest, most beautiful dog you'd ever want to see. She was imported from Romania. I didn't import her. It's another whole story. I could go on about that, but my wife ended up being Chloe's present. Some people found out she had cancer and they gave us Chloe. But Chloe was so intuitive. I've never owned an animal as smart as Chloe was. When the EMS would come and Vicky would be so sick and Chloe would immediately go to the corner and get out of her protective mode, but watch every EMS guy. And one night my wife had gone into seizures and I had done CPR for 45 minutes and the EMS guys got to our ranch, which is very remote. And they finally found it and got there, and they took over for doing CPR. And I was petrified because I thought Chloe would think that they were hurting her.
Right.
That dog knew. But the thing that'll get you is, and it'll get me, the night that Vicky passed away, she had fought so hard for 3 years. She did chemo every single week for 3 years. And it had pretty much destroyed her, not only physically, but mentally. And she had fought death so hard that she was just taking these shallow breaths for days. Doctor kept saying Vicky will be passing soon. Next day he'd come, he'd say the same thing. It was a Friday night. I got up on the bed with Vicky and I held her, and I told her, I whispered in her ears, it's okay to give up. It's okay to go. Chloe jumped up on the bed, and that dog had never been on our bed before. That was a no-no. Got up, put her paws across Vicky's chest, laid her head on Vicky's shoulder, and it was a few minutes later, and Vicky was gone.
Wow.
And, after that, I was oblivious for 6 months. I didn't know what was coming. But that dog had such intuition. It just amazed me. And animals are so instrumental. And this is the point I wanted to make. I think animals help us heal.
Yeah.
They help us heal wounds through their unconditional love that they give us. And people that abuse animals, to me, are the worst people in the world because animals can't defend themselves. Whether it be
I agree.
Horses, cows, rats, chickens, I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
There's something not right with somebody that abuses an animal because they can't defend themselves.
Yeah.
Humans have a choice. We have that pleasure, and we can defend ourselves, but animals can't. And I think that their unconditional love for their humankind is just an incredible thing.
It's amazing. And that's one of the reasons why the abuse of pit bulls, just shakes me to the core, because they're such good dogs. Your listeners can't see this, but this guy is Diggy, and this is my heart dog. And he was surrendered to us because they said he was aggressive in the home. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that they were being abusive and he was growling. And,
sure.
Knowing this dog, what you would have to do to get a reaction like that out of this dog, I can't imagine what they were doing to him, because he's bomb-proof otherwise.
Yeah, animals are a reflection of how they're taught, what they're taught and how they're trained.
Yeah.
Chloe could be the most ardent of defenders of her family. Mm-hmm. She could also be the greatest lover to everybody in the world. If you showed her love, she gave it right back. It was amazing. But it just really bugs me when people abuse that. But aggressive dogs are aggressive because their owners have made them that way.
Yeah. It's true.
So do you do dog training type things, or do you just do that with your rescues?
As an organization, we do. I'm not a dog trainer, but we have amazing, positive, force-free dog trainers that work with our dogs. And when we have the facility, all of our adoptable dogs will go through basic training and be certified before they're even adopted out to the community, which is really radical. And I'm very excited about it.
Don't know which direction you want your life to take? Are you sinking deep down into the pit of uncertainties day by day? So, what's the secret to leading a happy, satisfied life? It's taking matters into your own hands. But what if the matters in question are a total blur? Art Costello's Expectation Academy course aims to tell you exactly how you can get some clarity in your life. This course can be your savior on your journey to reinventing yourself. While you certainly can't plan your whole future ahead, you can definitely control twists and turns your life takes. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for this course now at expectationacademy.com. Get a chance to broaden your horizons and add meaning to your life. That's expectationacademy.com.
Let's get back on track a little bit. I know that you teach your clients about having free time for their families. How do you teach that? How do you teach people to make time for their families?
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that I think is really missing in society today. It's one of people's number one complaints, that they don't have time. They don't have leisure time. They don't have self-care time. I created a tool back when I was broke and, taking care of my kid and working nights and starting in arms coaching. I created a time management tool that I call Sacred Structure. Because what happened was I was looking for time management tools and none of them were written by solo moms working around the clock and starting a business. Like none of them applied to me. And so I created Sacred Structure, which is a way to prioritize your time according to what you love. And it's a bit of a process. It doesn't work overnight, but you know what? Nothing worthwhile happens overnight anyway. And I teach it to all my clients. And it's a way of really prioritizing what you're doing according to what's most important and what you love the most. And then setting really healthy boundaries and parameters and structures around what you're doing with your time.
Time management is probably one of the biggest issues that I see in coaching.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of time that people they spend on things that are non-productive.
Yeah.
And they need to be doing things that are productive.
Yeah, exactly.
And then cutting out chunks of time that they spend with their family and their friends and doing the things that they love. And I agree, it's a big, big thing.
It is.
You know, we're getting up here towards, I think we've got 10 or 15 more minutes to go. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to tell us what's important to you. What's the most important thing? And I'm talking about business, teaching. What's the most important thing to you?
Well, I mean, personally, my most important thing to me is myself and my kid and my family and getting space to have the impact in the world that I want to have.
You said something that just really hit my heart. Myself.
Yeah.
Because you have to give yourself time. You can't do anything for anyone else unless you take care of yourself first. So,
yeah, so important. And this is part of Sacred Structure for me. When I'm planning my schedule and giving it to every summer, I make my calendar for the year and I give it to my assistant because she's the one who plugs in my client care times and all that stuff. The first thing that goes in my calendar is all the time off I want. I take every school vacation that my kid has off. I take every day off that she has. I work half a day every summer. I take all of August off, most of December. I put in the exercise classes I want to go to. I put in the vacations I want to take. My entire work life is built around me and my family first. So that's really important to me. I think that we are suffering culturally, probably globally, but certainly culturally, from an absolute acute deficit of time doing things that we love. And it's breaking us as a species. So that's really important to me. And that's very core to what I teach other women, for sure.
I think that that's probably one of the most powerful things that we've talked about on this podcast. Could you just go over quickly again that you break out your time for yourself?
Yep. I make my calendar every summer. I make it in the summer because that's when I get the kids' school schedule for the next year. So I sit down and I put into my calendar all of her weeks off, all of her days off, all of her early release days off. I put in most of August off, most of December off. I put in every family vacation we're taking. I put in all the exercise classes that I want to take and anything else. I also put into my calendar, which is really important for people running their own business. I put in regular periods of time, about a week, every 5 or 6 weeks, where I'm not seeing clients. I'm only working on my business. And then I give that to my assistant and she schedules in my client hours and group calls and things like that around that time. Mm-hmm. But everything is built around time for myself, time to nurture myself, time to nurture my family, and time to nurture my business.
I used to own a business and I had quite a few employees and all that. And my thought was, after you said that, I wish that my employees would have given me a calendar of when they wanted time off, what days it was. I mean, I wouldn't even care if it was one day during the week and all that. But, I wonder how many employers would let their employees do that. I know small employers would be more apt to do it.
Yeah.
But large employers really need to do it because it would cut down on a lot of turnover. I mean, especially in the lower types of jobs where people just will work for 6-7 months and then go on to another job.
Yeah.
I've seen people leave jobs they love just because they wanted to have 2 weeks off to go do something and just walk away from it.
I hope to one day be a giant employer of people and be able to do that for all of my employees. I have only 4 or 5 employees now, or people who work for me. And I highly encourage 4-day work weeks, 5-hour work days, whatever helps them to be happy and healthy and functioning, because that's what makes my business good. When people who work for me are really happy and healthy.
More productive.
Way more productive.
When you have happy employees, you've got productive employees. They're committed to you. If I knew that I could submit my schedule for the next year to my employer and that these were the days that I was going to be able to take off around what was important to me, my children, my 3 kids and their schedule, had I had that opportunity, I had it because I worked for myself, so I did it. But for people who worked for me, I would have loved that instead of having them call in and creating a void on a day when I really needed them, because they'll come to you and say, hey, today my son is doing this really cool thing at school and it's been planned for a year. Well, why do you wait the day before to tell me?
Yeah, exactly.
And then I have to make the adjustments. So anyway, that is a great, great tool. That's something really special.
Thank you.
We're keeping on here, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to tell people about where they can get a hold of you, what you're up to, what's going on in the next 6 months, year that is really important that you can share with us. And
sure. Yeah, I'm really active on Facebook. So folks can find me either at Britt Bolnick, Bolnick on Facebook. There's an In Arms coaching page where they can find me. And I always welcome people just coming and saying hi. There's a website, inarmscoaching.com. And we keep that fair. Honestly, most people come to me through connecting with me in real life or on Facebook. So the website has, the stuff that websites have, but that's a good place to reach me or email me. But really come by and say hi to me on Facebook or Instagram. I just love connecting with people, and anything that I'm doing will be up there.
What's your handle on Instagram?
I knew you were going to ask that. I'm really not good at Instagram. I spend most of my time on Facebook, but I think it's just Britt Bolnick.
Okay.
I mean, if you put in Britt Bolnick, there aren't any others that I've ever known. So you can definitely find me that way.
Well, I didn't think there was any other Art Costellos, but I found out there's a ton of them.
Wow. Who knew?
Yeah. So any events you're doing this year?
I'm not quite sure how you churn these out, but I do these virtual weeks on Facebook. Again, they are for women, business owners, entrepreneurs, creatives, but that's probably half of your community at least. And it's a virtual week on money and magic mindset. So it's about a really important lesson I learned in the last year or two about the difference between financial success, which is about what you have externally, and financial sovereignty, which is about how you feel about what you have. And that's coming up September 23rd through 28th. So I don't know if that's going to be applicable to your peeps, but they can always find me on Facebook and see what I'm up to.
Yeah, that'll come up. I don't know my own schedule when it comes to publishing this but I think we're about 5 weeks out right now. So.
Okay. So they can come find me, and just say hi.
Yeah. Well, I think we're waning off, and I'm going to have to wean myself off of this great conversation that we've had. So with that being said, Britt, man, we got to stay connected.
Yeah, I would love that.
I really, really enjoy you, and we have so much in common. I think my audience is going to really find this interesting. And by the way, I think 80% of my audience is women.
That makes sense, yeah.
I'm too sensitive for men.
You are. Men need you, Art. Men need you. More men need to listen.
We didn't talk about emotional intelligence and all that, but
another time.
I do a lot of work with that, and there definitely will be another time. So with that being said, thank you, Britt. I've really, really enjoyed it. And I can't tell you, audience, you've got to go to her website. This woman will change your life. She's got so many good things going on with time management and her personal story. You're going to love it. And please support her. And we're going to honor her by our support. Thank you, Britt, again. It's been a pleasure. Again, audience, thank you for listening. And I got to tell you again, follow Britt. Goodbye, everybody. Love you.
Thanks for listening to the show. Drop us your comments and questions with what you want answered on the show. You can subscribe on iTunes and Binge Network. You can also get more information on the website, expectationtherapy.com.